Perhaps they didn't feel the address was up to their master's level. The reason they didn't do anything about it must have been because he didn't respond. Paying no attention to them, Aints continued, no. The one attacking is a trusted aide of mine, just one man. His name is Cocytus. Hearing that, Zayusu was assaulted by despair, as if the world were crumbling. If the enemy were going to attack in numbers, the Lizardmen might have had a chance. Maybe it would have been more of the same unpleasant army from the day before. In that case, they would have had a slim chance of winning. But that chance was gone. It would be a solo attacker. An army that had lost once already, after displaying this much force, would send a single man to attack. Unless it was some kind of punishment for the attacker, they had complete faith in him. Someone, a being with unfathomable power, trusted there was only one thing that person could be, another with unfathomable power, such that the Lizardmen stood no chance of winning. We'll surrender, don't be boring, and say you'll surrender before you've even fought. Simone, let us fight a bit. We'd like to taste a proper victory. Aints crushed the end of his sentence, as if robbing Shasryu of his words. In short, did he mean to make an example of them? Zayusu snapped in his head. You scum! As the stronger power, they would expunge the reality of their loss with a massacre. In other words, what was about to occur was ritual sacrifice. It was nothing less than a trampling of the Lizardmen in order to rob them completely of their will to rebel. That's all I wanted to discuss. I'll be watching in 4 hours, so make it entertaining. Please wait. Will this ice melt? Win or lose, it would be brutal for the Lizardmen to live on the frozen lake. Oh right, he'd forgotten. His tone was so flippant. I just didn't want to get all muddy walking in the marsh. Once we get back to the other side, I'll cancel the spell's effects. What? Both Zayusu and Shasryu gasped in shock, unable to believe their ears. He froze it because he didn't want to get muddy. The expression "this can be" wasn't nearly strong enough. The power imbalance was too great. This being could bend the powers of nature as if it was nothing and for any whim he wished. Was this who we've been up against? Both Zayusu and Shasryu were assailed by the fear of lost children. All right, farewell Lizardmen, gate. Having said everything he'd come to say, Aints waved his hand slightly. A hemisphere of darkness appeared before the throne and he disappeared into it. Goodbye, Lizardmen. Later, Lizardmen. Farewell, Lizardmen. The 2 women and single boy who had been in attendance addressed them disinterestedly and followed their master into the darkness. You, well, take care. Eggshell teal, clay ebony cinnabar lime white. Well then, goodbye. The dark elf girl and the strange monster were swallowed up by the darkness. You may go free. Well, give us some fun, Lizardmen. The man with the tail was the last to disappear, and when his gentle voice echoed out, the weights holding down the pair of Lizardmen melted away. Left suddenly alone, still prostrate in the mud, Zayusu and Shasryu no longer had the energy to rise. The freezing chill of the marsh didn't even bother them anymore. The shock to their minds was far more intense. Damn it, an uncharacteristic utterance coming from Shasryu. It contained a mixture of emotions. When Zayusu and Shasryu returned, the chiefs of each tribe, who had climbed up on the mud walls to evade the ice, were there to meet them. There were no other Lizardmen in the area. They probably figured they would need to discuss in secret, so Shasryu probably thought he didn't need to hide anything. He spoke frankly, relaying every last detail of the so-called discussion. There was no big reaction to his heavy tale. Everyone's breath just caught slightly. They had probably guessed what sort of negotiations would take place. Got it. And what about the ice? We can fight if it doesn't melt. That won't be a problem. He said he would cancel the spell. That's what you got out of the negotiations, huh? Shasryu just smiled faintly in response to the small Fang tribe chief's question. Comprehending his meaning, the chief cheerlessly shook his head. While you were out, we did some investigating. There are enemies inside the lake. They look like skeleton soldiers. It seems like they were standing by in positions surrounding the village. No let escape. So they were really serious about this, I guess so. The 4 who hadn't met the ruler side. Perhaps they had also arrived at the conclusion that it would be a ritual sacrifice. Well, what'll we do? Mobilize all warriors. As well as everyone brother, could we do it with just 5? Keeping crushed slightly in his field of vision, Zayusu continued his petition to not only Shasryu, but also all the males. Their intention is to put on a show of their overwhelming power, so I doubt they'll kill us all. If that's the case, then we need a leader to unite the survivors. If you think about the future of lizard mankind, it would be a waste for all of us here to die. Two chiefs looked between Zayusu and Crush and voiced their agreement. Yes, right, Don T, you think Shasryu? Yes, Zayusu is right. Then having gotten Zenbul's approval sounds good, fine by me. Shasryu no longer had any reason to veto his brother's wishes. Okay, let us do that. Someone needs to survive and lead the tribe. I was thinking that Crush is the right person for the job. Being an albino might be a minus, but her priest skills will be indispensable. Wait just a minute. I am going to fight with you, Crush shouted, wondering why they were leaving her behind so late in the game. Besides, if someone else going to stay behind, wouldn't Shasryu be better? He the chief everyone trusts the most. That's why he no good. Their intention is to show us their overwhelming power. They're probably aiming to make us lose heart so they can conquer us easier. So if there was a lizardman left alive who gave everyone hope and out of all us chiefs, and so on here, you actually have the worst reputation. Crush didn't know what to say. It was the undeniable truth that she, the albino, was least popular. Convincing them with words will be impossible, she thought, and turned to Zayusu. I am going with you. Didn't you have me resign myself when you called me to follow you here, and now you're going to tell me this? Back then, everyone might have died, depending on the situation, but now it seems like one of us will be able to make it. Don T, give me that. The air seemed to crackle with Crush's anger. Several strikes sounded against the mud wall. The intense emotion was making her tail go out of control. Zayusu, you convince her. See you in 4 hours. With that, Shasryu walked off. A moment later, they heard the crack of breaking ice and some splashes. The other 3 chiefs had hopped off the wall and gone with him. Zenbul raised a hand in a slight wave without turning around. After watching them go, Zayusu turned back to Crush. Crush, please understand. How can I? Plus, there's nothing that says for sure that we lose. With my priest powers, we might be able to win. How empty those words sounded. Not even Crush herself believed them. I don't want to send the female I love to her death. Please just grant this foolish male's wish. Crush embraced him, visibly heartbroken. That was a dirty move. Sorry, you're probably going to die. Yeah, that was true. The chance of his survival was low. No, probably non-existent. In only a week's time you stole my heart, and now you're telling me to just see you off. Yeah, I am so glad I met you, but it was also horrible luck. Crush's arms tightened around Zayusu's back, as if she didn't want them to ever part. Zayusu had no words. What should I say? What can I say to make it okay? These thoughts tormented him. After a little while, Crush looked up. Her face was full of determination. He was worried she would say she was going with them no matter what. Instead, she made a clear declaration. I am going to get pregnant. What? Let us go. Aints and the others' base was where Cocytus had been the previous day. Aura was building a fortress there. If they listened closely, they could hear the sound of construction in the distance. When Aints entered one of the rooms, Victim, who had been silently following, spoke to him. Victim said, eggshell teal fuchsia scarlet ash crimson clay grape, gray jonquil orange teal peach peach eggshell chestnut gray ivory opal khaki clay brown eggshell scarlet jonquil silk grape crimson. Victim continued, well, Lord Aints, here I will take my leave. Nice work today. Then until we get back, please watch over level 1. Ivory orange peach grape cream grape orange jonquil. Understood. Gate. Victim disappeared into the gate of darkness, leading to the first level of the great tomb of Nazarick that Aints made. After seeing off the guardian that had a powerful death-activated detainment skill, Aints turned his attention to the room. At the same time, he sensed Aura in the back, staring at the floor. She had probably been trying to get the interior decoration together for Aints' arrival. There was evidence of her painful efforts here and there around the room, but it still didn't look as good as Nazarick. She seemed ashamed. It's really not so bad though. Aints was once a normal person, so it didn't bother him so much. His quarters in Nazarick weren't bad either, but they were too luxurious. Sometimes he didn't know what to do with himself there. Here, he could actually relax, so it was nice. He wanted an 8-tatami mat studio. Maybe he should just secretly make one somewhere. Oh, he had to make sure to praise his underling's work. He had to tell Aura how satisfied he was with what she'd done here. Watch over your workers with gratitude. Without trust, they will not flourish. Aints remembered the words he'd seen framed and hung in the president's office at a client company. He didn't know who D said it, but he thought it was a great quote. That was how an ideal boss should act. You have to express gratitude in words. If you don't praise people, they want work, or something like that. Sorry, I insisted on staying here, Aura. You don't have to worry about anything. I think highly of your work. Since you prepared this place for me, I consider it equal to Nazarick. Yes, sir. Her eyes widened a little. Did that make her feel better? Aints wondered. He couldn't think of anything else good to say, so he examined the room again to divert the conversation. It still smelled strongly of wood. Returning to Nazarick would definitely be safer than staying somewhere so vulnerable. This place had no defensive spells cast on it. In a way, it was like a house made of paper. But one could also say it was the perfect place to set himself up as bait to catch a big fish. Since its location was fairly removed from the lake, the only ones who could come after him here would be Yggdrasil players, if there were any, or those with equivalent power. He had planned it so that any raid on this place would reveal a powerful enemy. Of course it was dangerous, but Aints felt that nothing ventured meant nothing gained. Was nobody coming, or did this operation also fail? What was that? Aura, let me ask you something. What is that? Aints' gaze fell on a white chair in the back of the room. It had a tall back and an imposing appearance. It was magnificently crafted. It would have done well as a work of art, as long as one issue was ignored. Though it be plain, I prepared you a throne. Demiurge, following behind him, answered. Aints figured as much and asked another question. What kind of bones are those? Various different animals. I collected the good bits from things like griffins and wyverns. I see it was a throne made of numerous bones. Nothing like it existed in Nazarick, so Demiurge must have made it while he was out. It seemed to contain more than a few skulls, human, or perhaps subhuman. Although the throne was made from bleach-white bones, with no blood or meat clinging to them, it still seemed to radiate an unpleasant, gory smell. Should he sit in this creepy thing? Aints hesitated for a moment, but his subordinate had prepared it for him, so it would be rude not to sit. It would be different if he had a legitimate reason to refuse. After considering several options, Aints thumped his hand. Sholtia, I believe I said I would punish you. I'll do it right now. Yes, I'll humiliate you. My lord, she seemed a bit surprised at the sudden address. Down on your knees and hang your head. Get on all fours. Yes, sir. Looking slightly confused, she proceeded to the place he indicated in the center of the room and got into the position he described. Aints moved next to her and sat down on her slender back. Lord Aints. Sholtia emitted an airy cry of surprise. The reason she didn't move a muscle despite being so shaken was because Aints was on top of her. Be my chair here. Got it? Yes, sir. Aints shifted his gaze away from Sholtia, who seemed awfully happy, to Demiurge. Sorry, Demiurge, perhaps another time. Aha, brilliant, that you would sit on a guardian. Certainly no one else could have such a chair. It was perfectly suited to a supreme being. I am impressed as always, Lord Aints. I would never have thought of it. I see. Aints looked away from Demiurge's fairly sparkling face and wondered what the big smile was for when a beautiful woman addressed him, beaming. Excuse me, Lord Aints. May I exit the room for just a moment? I'll return straight away. What is the matter, Albedo? Well, it's fine, go ahead. She thanked him and left the room. Immediately afterward, they heard a woman's voice shout, Rag, and the noise of something smashing into the wall. The whole building shook. A minute later, Albedo returned to the silent room, wearing her usual gentle smile. IV returned, Lord Aints. Oh, Aura, when I left the room, I accidentally bumped into the wall. It seems to have broken, so do you think you could fix it later? Sorry about that. Oh, okay, sure, I'll fix it. Aints sighed and swallowed all the things he wanted to say. He arrested his gaze, which threatened to ascend into the air, and tethered it to his staff and its ominous aura. He couldn't bring the real thing to such a dangerous location. So this was an imitation guild weapon, a prototype that he crafted. He had included an item that had been lying around in the treasury since their experiments with effects. Visually, it was practically perfect, a polished fake. If the guild weapon was destroyed, the guild would collapse. That's why he couldn't just carry it around casually. He had left it in the care of the domain guardian of the Cherry Blossom Sanctuary on level 8. He thought of defensive actions they could take if a ring got stolen, but he really liked to, well, he guessed they couldn't really test for that. As Aints pondered, Sholtia began to fidget. She was making slight adjustments so the position of Ain's butt would make it easier for him to sit. Feeling a bizarre tickle, he looked down at the back of her head. She was breathing hard. He was probably heavy. The slender back beneath him was that of a 14-year-old girl. A large adult was seated on a little girl's back. It hit him what a perverted, shameful, cruel thing he was doing, and he thought maybe he'd gone a bit too far. Sholtia was an NPC created by an old friend. Peroncino probably never thought she would be used this way. Aints felt like he was dishonoring his old guildmate, so he thought it could count as punishment for himself. But he knew that was foolish. He shouldn't be causing Sholtia this much pain. Sholtia, does it hurt? He would stop. He was about to stand when she turned her head around to look up at him. Her face was flushed red, and her eyes glittered with lust. It doesn't hurt at all. It's more like a reward. She panted, exhaling abnormal heat with every breath. Aints was reflected in her gooey eyes. Her glistening beet red tongue licked her lips, leaving a bewitching sparkle of light. The slight wriggling of her body reminded him of a snake. She was burning up with desire. Yikes! It creeped him out. He instinctively began to stand up. No, I can't do that. This was Sholtia's punishment. And Sholtia's failure was born of his own mistake. Resisting his desire to get away from her would be his punishment. Aints quashed his uncomfortable emotions. He endured his squirming chair and wondered, Peroncino, how much of a perv did you make her? Now then, let us get down to business. It seems like we frightened them pretty well. I think it went perfectly, Lord Aints. Indeed, the looks on those lizardmen's faces. Aints smiled with relief at the Guardian's feedback. He hadn't actually been able to read the changes in the lizardmen's faces. They resembled humans more than reptiles, but their expressions were still completely different. I see. Then I guess the demonstration of our power that Cocytus wanted for Phase 1 was a success. He breathed a relaxed sigh. Of course, he would expect nothing less from a super-tier spell that could be used only 4 times a day. He'd gone all out and cast creation. If they hadn't freaked out, it would have been depressing. Now then, Demiurge, how long will it take to compile the data about how much of the lake froze? We're currently working on it, but due to the ice covering a larger area than expected, progress is slow. If it's all right with you, we'll take a little more time. Aints held out a hand to stop Demiurge from kneeling and then placed it near his mouth. The ice covered a wider area than expected, but I guess we can call it a successful experiment. The creation was a super-tier spell that made it possible to change environmental effects. Players used it in Yggdrasil to stop the heat in a volcanic region or the chill in an icy region. They could have exhibited their power without a super-tier spell, of course, but he had cast it as a test of scale to see how far its effects would spread. In Yggdrasil, the creation covered quite a large area. When he tried it inside Nazarick, it had covered the entire 8th level. He didn't know what kind of effect it would have on the outside world, however. In Yggdrasil, it affected an area. He wanted to know how big an area was in this world. If he cast it on a plane and it covered the entire thing, that would be overkill. If he defrozen the entire lake, that was too wide a range. Apparently he needed to exercise some caution with super-tier spells. Okay, Aura, how's the security net going? I took the undead you lent me and put them on watch for a mile radius. So far, we haven't caught much of anything. I've also sent out some of my magical beasts with detection skills within a 2-mile radius. I haven't received reports of anyone suspicious. I see there's a possibility someone would use the skill Perfect Unknowable on approach. What about that case? No worries. I teamed up with Sholtia. We're using some undead with good detection skills as well. Fantastic. Aura grinned in response to Aints' praise. The depressed look from before was gone. We're giving them a big enough opening. Why hasn't the enemy who used the world item on Sholtia made a move? He repeated the question to everyone. Why hasn't there been any attempt to observe Nazarick or this place? Could there be some sort of surveillance that the current security net can pick up? Perhaps using a world item? Aints cocked his head in response to Demiurge's question. Momman considered that hypothesis, but even if there was some sort of world item surveillance, it wouldn't work on him, since he possesses a world item as well. It would have to be naked eye observations or another physical method. I guess there's always magic, but I thought they'd switch. The questions on the Guardians' faces made him realize he hadn't said enough. How can I explain this? There was one time we secretly held a precious metal mine. Because we had monopolized it, market prices soared. Someone plotted to take it from us using our robberos, one of the 20. Ain't smiled. He'd been annoyed at the time, but thinking back on it now, it was a good memory even though he'd gotten killed and dropped some pretty rare items. What? How dare they rob the supreme beings of their land? I won't allow it. Please give us orders immediately for its recapture. At Albedo's shout, Aints hurriedly looked over at her. All the Guardians were hostile and murderous. Demiurge was usually calm and composed, but even his face was twisted into a frown. Glimpses of determination showed through Mare's timid mean screaming, "I'll kill you." Sholtia was his chair, so he couldn't see her, but he sensed her body tensing through his seat. Calm down. This story ended a long time ago. Aints raised a hand and ordered them to relax.